Deep in the shadows of haunted forests, where the trees whisper secrets of the damned, 4 true stories await to chill your soul. Whispers in the pines, shadows that stalk, disappearances that defy explanation, and the thing that never left. If you dare to uncover these nightmares, join the Nightmare Society today, subscribe now, and step into the darkness with us. My brother and I went on a camping trip to the Allegheny National Forest in Pennsylvania in September of 2022. We'd grown up camping and hiking together, and we tried to do at least one trip a year. This time, we planned to hike about 10 miles into the back country and camp at a remote site near a small lake. The hike in was beautiful, late September, perfect weather, stunning fall colours. We reached the lake around 4 PM and set up our tents at a designated campsite on the shore. We were the only people there, which was exactly what we wanted. We cooked dinner over the fire, told stories, enjoyed the solitude. It was perfect. Around 10 PM, we were sitting by the fire when we heard something in the woods behind us. A voice, female, calling out, "Hello, is anyone there?" My brother and I looked at each other. Someone else was out here, probably looking for the campsite. My brother called back, "Yeah, we're here, at the lake campsite." The voice called again, "Hello, can you help me? I'm lost." It sounded like it was coming from maybe 100 yards into the woods, off the trail. My brother stood up. "We should go help her, she sounds distressed." I agreed. We grabbed our flashlights and headed into the woods in the direction of the voice. "Keep calling out," my brother yelled. "We're coming to you." The voice called again. "I'm over here. Please help." We pushed through the undergrowth, following the voice. It always seemed to be just ahead of us, just out of sight. We called out multiple times and the voice kept responding, guiding us deeper into the woods. After about 10 minutes, my brother stopped. "This doesn't feel right," he said. "We've been walking towards her for 10 minutes, but she doesn't sound any closer." He was right. The voice sounded the same distance away as we first heard it. Maybe she's walking away from us, not realise we're following. "Maybe, but..." He trailed off, listening. The voice called again. "Hello, is anyone there?" It was the exact same phrase as before, same tone, same inflection, like a recording. My brother's eyes widened. "That's not a person. I don't know what it is, but we need to go back." We turned and started walking back towards our campsite. We'd only gone about 10 minutes into the woods. We should be back at the lake in no time. But as we walked, we couldn't find the campsite. We couldn't find the lake. We'd somehow gotten completely turned around. Then we heard another voice. This time, it was my voice, calling from the darkness. "Hey, over here, I found the campsite." My brother and I froze. We were standing right next to each other. The voice calling was mine, but I wasn't speaking. My brother whispered, "What the hell is that?" My voice called again, "Come on, this way, I can see the fire." Then my brother's voice joined in, calling from a different direction. "No, it's over here. Follow me." We were hearing our own voices calling from the woods, multiple versions of ourselves, shouting contradictory directions. My brother grabbed my arm. "Don't follow the voices. Don't respond to them. We need to use the compass." We pulled out his compass, checked our bearing. "The lake is due west. We ignore the voices and just walk west. Agreed?" I nodded. We started walking west, following the compass. The voices continued, calling to us in our own voices, sometimes imitating the female voice we'd heard first. They were all around us, coming from every direction, saying things that sounded helpful but contradictory. "The trail is this way. I found water." "The campsite is just ahead. Help me, I'm hurt." Sometimes the voices sounded exactly like us. Sometimes they sounded like other people, men, women, even a child at one point. All of them calling, beckoning, trying to get us to follow them deeper into the woods. We ignored them and just kept walking west. After about 20 minutes, we finally broke out of the tree line and saw the lake. Our campsite was there, our tent, our fire still burning. We'd made a complete circle somehow, or had been led astray more than we realised. We didn't talk much. We quickly packed up all our gear, doused the fire, and started hiking out even though it was after 11 PM. We used our headlamps and followed the trail back towards the trailhead. We hiked for 3 hours in the dark, neither of us wanting to spend another minute in those woods. As we hiked out, the voices followed us. They stayed in the woods along the trail, calling to us, using our names, using our voices, trying to get us to leave the trail. We ignored them. We didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge them. We just kept walking. Around 2 AM, we reached the trailhead in our car. The voices stopped as soon as we left the forest boundary. We drove to a motel in the nearest town and crashed for a few hours. In the morning, my brother looked up information about the Allegheny National Forest. He found reports, dozens of them, going back decades, of people hearing voices in the woods, voices calling their names, voices sounded like family or friends, voices asking for help, and several cases of people going missing and wandering off the trails, following voices they'd heard. The local indigenous Seneca people have legends about the forest. They say it's inhabited by spirits that mimic human voices to lure people off the trails. They call them voice thieves. According to legends, these spirits steal the voices of people who've died in the forest and use them to trap the living. If you follow the voices, you'll get lost and eventually die, and then your voice becomes part of the collective, used to trap the next victim. I don't know if it's true, but I know that we heard our own voices calling to us from the woods, saying things we never said. I know that those voices tried to lead us deeper into the forest, away from our campsite, away from the trail, and I know that if we followed them, we might have ended up like the people who've gone missing in that forest over the years. My brother and I haven't gone camping together since then. We both lost our appetite for remote wilderness trips, because we learned that forests, they aren't just home to bears and deers and other normal wildlife. Some forests have other things living in them, things that hunt using human voices, human names, human pain. And once you hear them, once they call your name in your own voice, you'll never feel safe in the woods again. If you're ever camping or hiking and you hear someone calling for help in the woods, especially if you hear your own voice or the voice of someone you're with, do not follow. Stay on the trail, use your compass or GPS, and get out as fast as you can, because those voices aren't people, there's something else, something that's been in those forests for a long time, perfecting the art of mimicry, learning how to sound exactly like someone you trust, and if you follow them, you'll become part of their collection, just another voice in the darkness, calling to the next victim. My girlfriend and I went on a backpacking trip in Monongahela National Forest in West Virginia in June of 2021. We'd planned our 4-day trip, following a trail that would take us deep into the backcountry, away from other hikers. We both love solitude and wild places, and this trail, it promised exactly that. Remote, challenging, beautiful. The first 2 days went perfectly. We hiked about 8 miles each day, set up camp in designated sites, cooked over our camp stove, slept under the stars. It was everything we hoped for. On the 3rd day, we decided to explore off trail a bit. We'd seen a ridge to the east of our camp that looked like it might have great views. We left our heavy packs at camp and took a day pack with water and snacks, planning to be back by early afternoon. We hiked up the ridge, following what looked like an old game trail. The forest was incredibly dense, old growth trees, thick undergrowth, the kind of place that probably hadn't seen many humans in decades. After about an hour of climbing, we reached the top of the ridge. The view was worth it. Rolling forested mountains in every direction, no signs of civilization anywhere. We were about to head back down when my girlfriend spotted something through the trees. "Is that a building?" I looked where she was pointing. About 200 yards away, tucked into the trees, was a structure. A cabin, it looked like. That was odd. We were miles from any trail, in the middle of designated wilderness. There shouldn't be any buildings out here. We decided to check it out, curious. As we got closer, we could see it more clearly. It was definitely a cabin, fairly small, made of logs, but it looked old, really old. The logs were darkened and weathered, the roof was covered in moss, and several windows were broken. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades. We approached cautiously. The cabin was maybe 20 by 30 feet, a single room with a porch on the front. The door was hanging open, barely attached to its hinges. We looked at each other. "Should we go inside?" my girlfriend asked. "Let's just take a quick look. This is really interesting. I wonder how old it is." We stepped onto the porch carefully, testing the boards to make sure they wouldn't collapse. The porch creaked but held. We looked inside. The interior was a mess, debris on the floor, broken furniture, walls covered in moss and decay. But what caught my attention was the walls themselves. They were covered in writing, carved into the wood, scratched with something sharp. Hundreds of words, phrases, dates, covering every surface. We stepped inside carefully. I used my phone's flashlight to read some of the writing. Most of it was names and dates. John P., 1897. Mary visited 1902. The Harlan family 1915. Dates going back over a century. But scattered among the names were other messages, disturbing ones. "Don't sleep here. They come at night. 23 days trapped. Can't find the trail back. The forest won't let us leave." My girlfriend read those messages, her face going pale. "This is creepy. We should go." I agreed, but I was fascinated. I took photos of the walls, documenting the messages. There were dozens of them, spanning more than 100 years. People who'd found this cabin, stayed here and left warnings. As I was taking photos, I noticed something in the corner of the room. A backpack, modern, not old like the cabin. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, but it was definitely recent. I walked over and checked it out. Inside was gear, a sleeping bag, some mouldy food packages, a water filter, and a wallet. I opened it. Driver's license, credit cards. The license showed a man named David Brennan, age 32, from Pennsylvania. The license had expired 3 years ago. "Someone left their gear here," I said, showing my girlfriend the wallet. "Maybe they got rescued and couldn't come back for it." "Maybe, but why would they leave their wallet?" We searched the rest of the cabin quickly. There was more gear scattered around, another backpack, a tent still in its stuffed sack, hiking boots, all modern, all abandoned, and all covered in dust like they'd been here for years. "We need to leave," my girlfriend said firmly. "Right now." I didn't argue. Something was very wrong about this place. We left the cabin and started hiking back towards our camp. We'd been inside for maybe 10 minutes. We followed our tracks back the way we'd come, down the ridge. After about 30 minutes of hiking, we should have been close to our campsite, but we weren't. The forest looked different. The trees were arranged differently. We couldn't find the landmarks we passed on the way up. I checked my GPS. It wasn't getting a signal. No satellites, no position data, just a blank screen. "Do you recognize any of this?" my girlfriend asked, looking around nervously. "No, but our camp should be right in this direction. Let's just keep going." We hiked for another hour. Nothing looked familiar. We should have found our camp, or at least hit the main trail, but we were just deeper in an unmarked forest. No trails, no landmarks we recognized. I tried my GPS again. Still no signal. I tried my phone. No call service, which was expected, but the GPS should still work. It didn't. My girlfriend tried her phone. Same result. "We're lost," she said quietly. "We're not lost. We just need to find the trail. It's less than a mile from where our camp was. If we head west, we'll hit it eventually." We used my compass to head west. We hiked for 2 hours, pushing through thick undergrowth, climbing over fallen trees. Finally, we came out into a clearing, and there, at the edge of the clearing, was the cabin. The same cabin we left hours ago. We've walked in a complete circle, or the forest had somehow brought us back. Either way, we were back where we started. My girlfriend started crying. "What's happening? Why can't we get out?" I looked at the cabin. The door was still hanging open, dark inside, and I realised the messages on the wall. "Can't find the trail back. The forest won't let us leave." Other people had been trapped here too, maybe for days, maybe some of them never made it out. "We're not staying here," I said. "We're going to walk in a straight line, using the compass, and we're not stopping until we find the trail or the road or something." We picked a direction, due south, and just started walking. We marked trees as we went to make sure we weren't circling back. We hiked until it started getting dark, maybe 4 hours straight. Then we made a basic shelter with branches and our emergency blanket and tried to rest. Neither of us slept much. We heard sounds all night, footsteps around our shelter, whispers, branches breaking. At dawn, we continued south. We hiked all day, rationing our water. By evening, we were exhausted, dehydrated and desperate. And then, suddenly, we stumbled onto a trail. An actual maintained trail with blazes. We both nearly cried with relief. We followed the trail and within an hour reached a Forest Service road. A car was driving by, a ranger on patrol. We flagged him down and explained we'd gotten lost. He gave us water and drove us back to the trailhead where our car was parked. We'd been in the woods for 48 hours, most of it lost. The ranger asked where we gotten lost. We described the area, mentioned the cabin. His expression changed. "You found the old Harlan cabin?" "I don't know what it's called. It had names carved all over the walls, dates going back to the 1800s. "That's the Harlan cabin. It's been causing problems for decades. People find it, go inside, and then can't find their way back to the trails. We've had search and rescue operations up there multiple times. Most people make it out eventually, like you did, but not everyone." We found backpacks inside, recent gear, a wallet from someone named David Brennan. The ranger's face went grim. "David Brennan went missing in this forest 3 years ago. We searched for weeks, never found him." He paused. "If his gear is in that cabin, then he probably died up there, lost, just couldn't find his way out, and ran out of supplies." We told the ranger everything, the messages on the walls, the GPS not working, and walking in circles. He nodded like he's heard it all before. "That area has something wrong with it. Compasses don't work right, GPS gets scrambled, people get disorientated. We tried to close off access to that part of the forest, but there's no way to enforce it. It's too remote. We just warn people to stay on marked trails." We never reported the location of the cabin precisely. We didn't want anyone else to find it, to get trapped like we did. But I think about David Brennan sometimes, about how he found that cabin, got lost trying to leave, and never made it out. His gear is still there, in that abandoned cabin that shouldn't exist, in a part of the forest that doesn't follow normal rules. If you're hiking in remote forests and you find an abandoned structure that isn't on any map, don't go inside, don't investigate. Just mark the location and leave, because some places, they're abandoned for a reason. They're trapped, and the forest around them doesn't want to let you go. The messages on those walls weren't graffiti. They were warnings from people who learned too late that they walked into a place that catches hikers and keeps them until they die of thirst or starvation or despair. We were lucky. We got out, but David Brennan and others like him weren't so lucky, and their warnings remain, carved into those walls, waiting for the next curious hiker to read them and ignore them. I'm a wildlife biologist, and in August of 2020, I was conducting a survey of black bear populations in the Olympic National Forest in Washington state. This involved hiking into remote areas, setting up trail cameras, and checking them periodically to count individual bears and track their movements. I've been doing this work for years, was comfortable working alone in the backcountry. I was checking a string of cameras I set up along a remote valley about 10 miles from the nearest road. The hike in took me about 4 hours. I reached the first camera around 1 PM, checked the memory card, replaced the batteries, and moved on to the next one. Standard work. I had 6 cameras to check, which should take me until about 6 PM, then I'll hike out and be back at my truck by 10 PM, a long day but manageable. I was checking the third camera, around 3 PM, when I noticed something odd. The timestamp on the photos were wrong. The camera had been set up 2 weeks earlier, and I programmed it to take photos every time it detected movement. It should have thousands of photos by now, but the last photo was dated only 2 days ago, and there were only about 50 photos total. That didn't make sense. This was prime bear habitat. I should have gotten hundreds of photos of bears, deer, and other wildlife, but the camera had barely captured anything. I checked the settings. Everything was correct. The camera was functioning properly. It just hadn't recorded much activity. I moved on to the fourth camera. Same issue. Set up 2 weeks ago. Only 2 days of photos. The fifth camera. Same thing. Every camera showed the same pattern. 2 weeks of time had passed in the real world, but the cameras had only recorded 2 days of activity. I was puzzled but not alarmed. Maybe there was a technical issue, a software glitch with the timestamp. I'd have to review the footage more carefully back at the lab. I continued to the sixth and final camera, the deepest into the valley. When I reached it, I found something disturbing. The camera was gone. Not stolen. The mounting bracket was still attached to the tree, but the camera itself had been removed. And on the tree, carved into the bark above where the camera had been, was a message. Get out. Time is wrong here. My skin went cold. Someone had taken my camera and left a warning. But who? And what did they mean? Time is wrong here. I checked my watch. It was 5:30 PM. I'd been hiking and checking cameras for 4.5 hours. That seemed about right. I decided to head back immediately. I didn't like the feeling of this place anymore, and I wanted to get out before dark. I started hiking back towards the trailhead. I marked my route carefully with GPS waypoints, so navigation shouldn't be a problem. I hiked for what felt like 2 hours, checking my GPS periodically to confirm I was on the right track. Then I checked my watch. It was 5:45 PM, only 15 minutes had passed, even though I'd been hiking for what felt like 2 hours. I stopped and stared at my watch. That couldn't be right. I felt the exhaustion in my legs, the sweat on my skin. I'd definitely been hiking for a while, but my watch said otherwise. I checked my phone. Same time, 5:45 PM. I kept hiking, now paying close attention to time. I counted out loud, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Counting seconds to verify time was passing normally. After I counted to 60, I checked my watch. It had advanced by 3 seconds. 3 seconds when I counted to 60. Time was moving differently here. Slower. Much slower. I started to panic. If time was moving this slowly, and I'd already been in this valley for hours, then in the outside world, days or weeks might have passed. I'd be reported missing. Search parties might be looking for me, or they might have given up. I started running, crashing through the undergrowth, desperate to get out. I ran for what felt like an hour, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. I checked my watch, 5:50 PM. 5 minutes. I'd ran for an hour, and only 5 minutes had passed. I collapsed, gasping. This wasn't sustainable. At this rate, it would take me weeks of subjective time to hike out of this valley, even though in real world time only hours would pass. But I'd run out of food and water in days. I'll die here. and people on the outside would think I'd only been missing for a short time. I forced myself to calm down and think, the message on the tree, time is wrong here. Someone else had experienced it. They'd escaped. They'd carved the warning, which meant they'd gotten out. But how? I thought about the trail cameras. They'd only recorded 2 days of activity in 2 weeks. Time inside this valley was slower than outside, but the cameras had still recorded something. They were still functioning, still counting time in their own way. Maybe the effect wasn't uniform. Maybe there were areas where time moved more normally. I checked my GPS. I was still several miles from the valley entrance. I studied the topography. The valley was bowl-shaped, with ridges on either side. What if the time distortion was strongest in the centre of the valley and weaker near the edges? What if I could get to high ground, to the ridge, and time would move more normally there? I started climbing, heading towards the eastern ridge, exhausting, but I pushed myself. I climbed for what felt like 2 hours. I checked my watch, 6:10 p.m, 20 minutes. Time was still slow, but maybe slightly faster than before. I kept climbing. Finally, after what felt like another 3 hours, I reached the ridge. I was completely exhausted, could barely stand. I checked my watch, 7 p.m. In subjective time, I'd been hiking and climbing for about 6 hours since leaving the last camera. In real time, 90 minutes had passed. I sat down on the ridge, trying to catch my breath. From up here, I could see the valley below. It looked normal, just forest, nothing unusual. But I knew the truth. The valley was a trap. Time moved differently there, slower, and if you didn't realise it, you'll die before you could escape. I continued along the ridge, staying on high ground, refusing to descend back into the valley. I hiked for another 3 hours of subjective time. My watch showed 9 p.m. when I finally reached the trailhead. By all rights, it should have been well past midnight. But I made it out. My truck was where I left it. I got in, locked the doors, and just sat there for a while, shaking. Then I drove straight to the ranger station and reported what had happened. The ranger listened to my story, looked skeptical, but he wrote it down. He said there'd been a few reports over the years of people getting disorientated in that valley, feeling like time was off, but nothing this extreme. I submitted my trail camera data to my supervisor. The technical team analysed it. They couldn't explain the timestamp discrepancies. The camera was functioning correctly. The timestamps were accurate, but somehow, the cameras had only recorded 2 days of activity when they'd been deployed for 2 weeks. I quit that job a few months later. I couldn't go back into a remote forest, couldn't trust that time and space was stable, because I've experienced firsthand that they're not. There are places, valleys, forests, areas that look completely normal, where time moves differently, where hours feel like minutes, or minutes feel like hours, and if you don't realise it's happening, you'll get stuck. You'll die thinking you have plenty of time to escape, when really your days are compressed into minutes and you'll never reach the exit. The message carved into that tree was from someone who figured it out and escaped. I don't know who they were, but I'm grateful for their warning, even though I didn't understand it until it was almost too late. If you're ever hiking in remote areas and time seems off, if your watch doesn't match how long you've been walking, if the sun's position just doesn't make sense, get to high ground immediately. Get out of the valleys and bowls, and don't stop until you're back at your car, because some forests, they trap you not with maze-like trails or geography loops, but with time itself, and that's the worst trap of all.